Hi guys! This week I want to talk to you a little bit about Imbolc, which we have just celebrated in the Northern Hemisphere, and what it means to me as a pantheist and so on. I'm going to record this in two parts. I'm recording this part on the 31st of January, and I'm going to come back again on the 4th, on the morning of the 4th, which is the actual astronomical Imbolc, and talk to you in the aftermath of my ritual and all the celebrations that I'm doing and so on. So the cross quarters for me are a little bit complicated because here in Ireland we actually have a pretty strong tradition of celebrating the cross quarter Sabbats. We don't call them those. For us they are the turnings of the season. So for us the 1st of February is the 1st of spring, and we still celebrate it as such. As an Irish person, the cross quarters are a little bit different for me than the solstices and equinoxes because we actually still have a strong tradition in Ireland of celebrating pretty much all of the cross quarters. They are still for us the turn of the seasons. So the 1st of February is St Brigid's Day. For people in Ireland, we consider that to be the first day of spring, and we associate it with St Brigid, who is also the goddess Brigid. So she predates her sainthood, she predates Christianity. It's hard to know how many of the traditions that we still have around this day, how many of them actually predate Christianity and how many don't, because we just don't have the kind of written records for that information. But the celebrations include things to do with lighting candles and lights and so on, but that's less strong. We do things like we make a St Brigid's cross, which is a cross woven out of reeds. There are also traditions that I think are still upheld in parts of the country to do with a sort of straw doll, which is called the Breedog or the Little Brigid, and there are various traditions around dressing her and placing her in the home and making that doll and so on. And there are also associations with candles and lighting candles and leaving candles lit in windows. That's a strong tradition that we have for various different celebrations in the year, and that is something that is done on the eve of St Brigid's Day to kind of guide St Brigid into the home. So because we have this kind of strong cultural element to the cross quarters, I kind of tend to celebrate in two parts. I tend to have a kind of cultural social holiday on the actual kind of first day of the month, so the 1st of February, the 1st of May, etc. But then I will actually do my ritual a few days later, usually at the actual astronomical cross quarter. So the astronomical cross quarter is the midpoint between the solstice and the equinox. So in this case, the midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And that this year falls on the 4th of February. It's sometime in the morning, I think, for us here in Ireland. So I will be doing my ritual the evening before, on the eve of that. So I actually originally started doing this because my birthday is on Halloween, and I wanted to kind of separate my birthday from my ritual celebration of Samhain, and I have pretty much kept that up to this day. I don't always have a celebration on the 1st of the month, on the kind of cultural holiday. I don't always do anything on that day anymore. Like sometimes I'm just a bit too busy and I don't really get round to doing anything, apart from obviously on my birthday I will always do something to celebrate Halloween / my birthday. But this year I'm lucky enough to be getting to go along to a very unusual kind of celebration. It is nominally for St Brigid, and it's run by a bunch of nuns, but from everything that I've heard, they are very, very different to what you might imagine when you think of Catholic nuns. They are very kind of liberal, and they are very kind of non-denominational in who they kind of invite into this celebration of St Brigid. Their patron saint is St Brigid, so as you can imagine, this day is a big deal for them. And I'm going to be going along with a friend who lives close to this convent, or I don't even know if they really live. I mean, they definitely don't live in a cloistered convent, but they run this kind of centre. I don't know anything about the centre or what it's going to look like, what it's going to be, so I won't really have the opportunity to bring my camera along, I don't think, but I will definitely talk about it afterwards and let you know what my experience was of the centre and so on. So this evening I'm going to be going along to a sort of procession of lights is what I think it is. There is a well in this part of the country that is associated with St Brigid. The part of the country I'm going to, it is actually thought to be her birthplace, I believe, and it is the kind of part of the country that has the most stories attached to it about St Brigid and about the goddess Brigid. So there's going to be a procession, I believe, to the well that is most associated with her, and then tomorrow we're going to be making some Brigid's cross crosses and so on. So that's going to be interesting for me. It's been a long time, or I mean, I possibly have never really done anything as overtly sort of social and cultural to celebrate a Sabbath before, so that's kind of exciting to me. And then, of course, like I say, I'm going to be doing my ritual on the 3rd of February on the Monday. So briefly then, what does Imbolc mean to me? So I definitely associate this celebration more than any other Sabbath in the Wheel of the Year with the return of the light. So I mentioned in the video that I made about the winter solstice as a pantheist that I do think about the return of the light at the winter solstice. That is a big part of that celebration, but that celebration for me is more about the dark than it is about the light. It's that excitement of the kind of impending light, like the promise of light that is going to start to arise again after that moment of darkness. But it is very much a moment of darkness. Whereas at Imbolc, to me anyway, it is very much the return of light. We're getting to the point now where we're halfway towards having equal light and equal dark in terms of the day and night's length. And I really start to notice a difference at this time of year. I really struggle with the short days and with the lack of light, and this time of year I really start to get a boost of energy and a boost of kind of optimism relating to the light. Also in Ireland, we are actually getting buds on trees. We are getting flowers starting to push up, like the daffodils are starting to grow, not bloom yet, but they are starting to grow. We usually get crocuses around this time of year as well. So it does actually in Ireland feel like spring because we don't get a really cold winter. We really don't get a harsh winter at all. We still could very well have a very cold snap in February or even March. We still very easily could get snow, and that will kind of hinder the growth. It'll kind of halt it in its tracks. But we very definitely have this kind of feeling of spring here in Ireland at this time. It often starts to get quite mild. I mean, today it's 11 degrees Celsius here in Dublin, which is pretty mild, and yeah, it's definitely just starting to feel spring-like to me. So that's an important part of Imbolc for me. It's the return of the light and the return of kind of optimism and hope. Because I do struggle with the dark, my favourite time of year really is spring, because I'm coming out of a time that is kind of psychologically and emotionally kind of can be difficult for me, and so I tend to feel most excited about new projects and new ideas and stuff in the spring months. And the beginning of February for me is kind of, it's not quite that yet for me, but it's the kind of the beginning of it, and it is the spark of hope for it. It is kind of the seed for that springtime fever that I can anticipate having in March and April. So a big thing for me at this time of year as a pantheist, in terms of connecting to what I see as the divine, is getting outside more. And because it's getting milder, because we often do have quite mild snaps at this time of year, it's much easier to be outside and spend more time outside. I start to get really excited by that when we have our first kind of mild spell. You really feel like you can just put a coat on and go out and kind of just walk around for hours if you want to, sit outside if you want to. The sun will be starting to shine on our north-facing garden again. We have a corner where it starts to shine in February again, and I can sit in the sun and actually enjoy being outdoors again in a way that isn't quite so possible in the winter months. So that's a big thing for me, and I do like to try and get outside and go for walks and just kind of soak in the kind of peacefulness and calm that comes with that comes with taking alone time outside. It's a really important kind of creatively nurturing thing that I love to do. And also just having the longer evenings as well. Long before the clocks change, I definitely notice those longer evenings, and again, it gives you that feeling of there's more potential to the evenings, that there are more things you can do. I've just got more opportunity to go outside and get walks and be in the garden and do exercise outside and that kind of thing, and that's a really big one for me as well. I can find it quite difficult to, fit everything into my day in the winter months, because once it gets dark, I just kind of feel like the day is over. And so I'm always very excited to see that coming back again. It's the 4th of February today, and we passed astronomical Imbolc at about 9 a.m. this morning. So I made sure that I was sitting at my altar and was lighting some candles and generally just sort of meditating on the change of the season, because as I said, to my mind, we are now in spring. And I actually really like waiting those extra few days between kind of the 1st and the 3rd or 4th of February to celebrate Imbolc, because you really do notice almost every day at this time of year a larger amount of buds buds coming out on trees and bushes and so on, and more flowers pushing up through the ground. So you really do notice that. I also notice around this time of year there seems to be a really big jump in terms of the length of the days and how high the sun seems in the sky. So this will vary during the year depending on the shape of the earth, because of course the earth isn't perfectly spherical. So how quickly the changes happen does actually vary kind of slightly from time to time in the year. At the solstices it slows down obviously almost entirely, like we have very, very little difference between the days, but I definitely notice during the year that we have certain jumps when it's kind of a bigger change. And around this time of year, throughout February really, I feel like there is a big jump. Now I don't know if that's just psychological. I've never actually checked this out, if it actually is the case that there's a larger or quicker change. But I'm really noticing now, today, now that we've passed Imbolc, just how much I'm noticing how much higher the sun is in the sky. We've had 2 days of brilliant sunshine the last 2 days, and I'm really noticing how much the sun is shining into our garden now, and more sunlight coming into the house as well, and that is really kind of an encouraging feeling for me. So on the 31st of January, as I said, I travelled to the supposed birthplace of St Brigid. So as I said, St Brigid probably was a real person, but the kind of traditions and associations and miracles that are ascribed to her as a saint are kind of considered to have been possibly taken from a prior goddess Brigid, and that they were sort of ascribed to this historical figure over time, that there were probably customs associated with this time of year that then got associated with this canonized saint. So there probably was an historical figure who founded the abbey in Kildare. So going along to that celebration that was kind of run by this group of nuns and some other people in the town. So it was very interesting to go along to that. They're very almost non-denominational in the way that they approach these kind of spiritual celebrations. It's very much spiritual. I don't think there was any mention whatsoever of God. There was one mention of God once, I think. Something about God's hope within you or something like that. As far as I can remember, there was no mention of Jesus. And generally speaking, it was just very kind of vaguely spiritual, quite humanistic, I would say, in tone, and also quite political in that it focused a lot on the environmental crisis, and they were even kind of appealing to people to think in the upcoming general election that is happening this week in Ireland, to really think about what our values should be and the problems that our country is facing, and to be sort of mindful of other people who are struggling and of the planet and so on when we make our choices. So I really appreciated that. I really appreciated that they kind of made it a very sort of communal, humanistic, sort of vaguely spiritual, but something that almost everybody could find something in. Like, you didn't have to be of any particular denomination or really actually be religious or spiritual at all in order to get something out of the experience. So the main event really was a procession in the darkness from one of the wells that is kind of related to St Brigid up to the centre, which was built for the nuns, but also as as a marker or a heritage centre surrounding this whole concept of the kind of Brigidine nuns in that town. So there was kind of a lot of songs and a lot of speeches at the starting point and at the end point, and then the procession was kind of lit by firelight, and there were candles and lanterns, and it was all really beautifully done. So it was an interesting experience for me. I've said before that I've only ever been to one group pagan ritual, and the only other kind of group religious ceremonies I've ever been to have, I think, been Christian. I don't think I've ever been to any other actual ceremonies outside of that branch of religions. I've certainly been in mosques and other kinds of temples, but I don't think I've witnessed any other kind of religious ceremony. So yeah, my experience of group spirituality is quite limited, and I did find it interesting. I will say that I found it a little bit hard to immerse myself in the moment and immerse myself in the experience, especially because the things that were being focused on weren't necessarily things that I would focus on at this time of year, and also just because the group were not hugely invested. There was at least 100 people there, I would say, maybe even more, and Obviously, not everybody in the group is going to be really invested in having some big spiritual experience. There were a lot of children there. And during the procession, a lot of people were kind of talking quietly amongst themselves. So it wasn't like something where you could really kind of get into the moment and really immerse yourself. But I will say that it was a very worthwhile experience. It's been a very long time since I've been part of that kind of communal spiritual experience. And it's very nice to be able to go along to something that is celebrating the festivals that I personally celebrate. And it's definitely something that I would do again, absolutely would do again. It's also making me really excited about the idea of finding actual pagan groups in my area and going along to pagan events, because if I can get that much out of something that is not explicitly pagan, it can only be more valuable and just more evocative to me to kind of attend group pagan events. So the next day we kind of went along to the centre / convent-y kind of spiritual centre type place. We made a St Brigid's cross, and I just generally kind of got a feel for the town and a feel for the space and so on. And it was a really wonderful experience. I was staying with a friend of mine. She's a fair bit older than me and she has a family, and it's a very different experience for me to be, hanging out with her children just having that kind of family experience. And we played music on the night of the 31st in a pub, which I hadn't done in a long time, Irish traditional music, which I used to play and I really don't play anymore. And that was really fun as well. So all in all, it was a really fun experience. It was a really novel experience, which I think for Imbolc makes a lot of sense. I think a lot about novelty and newness at this time of year. I think more so than any other Sabbath, I really focus on the idea of novelty and bringing new things, bringing fresh things into my life. And so that felt really, really fitting as well, to be doing something a bit different and spending time with a friend that I really haven't seen much of at all in the past 5 years. So I don't have a whole lot more to say really. As I said, I did my ritual on the eve of actual Imbolc, so the night of Monday the 3rd, and I really enjoyed that. That was a very positive, very immersive kind of ritual for me. I've actually really been enjoying changing up my altar at each Sabbath again. It hasn't been something that I kind of immediately got into when I came back here, but now that I have this space and now that I'm kind of more organised with my unpacking and everything, I was able to change up some elements of the altar before my ritual, and then I actually changed the picture. I changed that actually during the ritual, and I actually really, really enjoy that. I think I'm going to make sure that I'm changing up some element of the altar at every single Sabbath, and then doing a kind of a proper overhaul at the turn of every season. And I really enjoyed this feeling of like moving from one deity to another. So I made a video in the past. I'll try and remember to link that up above. I made a video saying that I was thinking of focusing on an individual deity for each season, that I wanted to kind of focus more on the 4 main deities that are a big deal for me in my mind, and those are Gaia, Cernunnos, or the Horned God, the Morrigan, and Odin. And spring for me is the time of Gaia, so I was moving from the time of Odin in the winter into the time of Gaia, and I really enjoyed that as well. I kind of was subsuming Brigid or Brigid into Gaia. She's a very Gaia-esque kind of deity to me, and I think I'm going to go with that sort of soft polytheism, but kind of associate those other deities with one of those 4. And yeah, having 4 deities like that just makes more sense to me than having 2. I realised as well that I definitely have been moving away more and more from any kind of hard dualism in my practice, and I said that in my video about Wicca. But I actually really am enjoying breaking things into 4s again, the 4 quarters, the 4 seasons, the 4 directions, and so on. And I've been incorporating that more and more into my ritual. I've been doing something that looks a lot more like casting a circle actually in recent times, and I've really been enjoying that too. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that element of my practice. I'm going to be excited to see how Astara goes. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how that goes, because I won't be switching to a new deity, but I am going to turn the altar cloth. So I have this altar cloth that has, I think they're cranes on it, that one of my parents gave gave to me, I think, or somebody gifted to me from some other country. I don't even remember where now. I'm gonna have to ask around and try to remember where that came from. But it's black on one side and kind of a pinkish red on the other. So I like to kind of turn that with the dark and the light of the year. And I've decided that I'm going to turn that on the equinoxes, because this early part of spring to me still has a lot of darkness. And I like to kind of brighten up the altar. I really liked changing the image on there to kind of represent the kind of the Gaia side of things, and take the Morrigan kind of image down. But I do like to keep that kind of darkness on there until we actually hit the equinox. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how this feels. Changing up the altar like this with the seasons, I think this is something that you're going to see in my practice for a long time to come. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. I think I've rambled on enough, but I would love to know how your Imbolc was, and yeah, what it means to you, how you celebrated and how you celebrate every year, and so on, if you do in fact celebrate this holiday. If I had been a bit more organized, I might have actually made this video before Imbolc. It hadn't occurred to me that I should do that. But let me know as well whether you prefer to have these kinds of videos before the event or after the event, when I can kind of reflect on my experience of the Sabbath. So the solstice one I did before the solstice, and then this one, Imbolc, I've done after Imbolc. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below. I have a feeling it'll be one of those things where it'll look like it's performing less well because I'll get fewer non-subscribers clicking on it, but I feel like maybe it's more valuable to you to hear about my thoughts after the fact if you're somebody who's actually, I don't know, a loyal subscriber and somebody who's kind of following me and invested in what I have to say. I'm not sure, but do let me know in the comments down below, and I'll endeavour to kind of keep this up. And whenever I feel like I have something to say about the Sabbath anyway, I'll then endeavour to do it either before or after, whichever you prefer. So yeah, thanks a million for watching. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell so that you can get notifications every time I upload a video, and I will talk to you again soon.